Feels like a shadow's waiting for us. And that was it. That was exactly what it felt like. They told us the enemy wore uniforms, that you could see them, aim at them, shoot them. But the longer I spent in Vietnam, the more I realized the truth. Out here in this endless, choking jungle, the real enemy wasn't always a man. Sometimes it was silence. Sometimes it was fear. Sometimes it was something you couldn't even name. My name is Daniel Danny Cole, Corporal 1st Cavalry Division. In the summer of 1968, we were deep in the Central Highlands, sent to secure an area along the Cambodian border. Command called it routine reconnaissance. But there was nothing routine about the place we were walking into. It was jungle so thick you couldn't tell where the shadows ended and where the night began. Every branch seemed to reach for you. Every rustle could have been the wind, or a man with a rifle waiting to cut you down. There were 6 of us in the patrol. Sergeant Frank Donovan led us. An old hand, scar running from his temple down across his jaw. The kind of man who'd seen more than he ever said. Beside him was Martinez, quick with a joke, though his eyes gave away how scared he really was. Then there was Riley, barely 20, freckles still visible under the grime. He'd carried a letter from his mother folded in his helmet liner, said he read it every night. The others were Jackson, our radio man, big, quiet, carried that heavy pack like it was fused to his spine. And then Doc, our medic, always muttering under his breath, sometimes prayers, sometimes curses, and me. Just another set of boots in the mud, rifle across my chest, heart pounding louder than the insects. We moved in silence, one step at a time. The canopy swallowed the sun until the whole world seemed green and black, a place without horizon or sky. Sweat poured down our faces, leeches clung to our legs, the air tasted like rot. Donovan halted us at a narrow trail, eyes scanning the undergrowth. He raised a fist, the signal to stay low. We dropped instantly, rifles ready. The jungle was alive with sound, cicadas screaming, birds shrieking, branches groaning. But beneath it all, there was something else. A wrongness, an absence. I'll never forget the way Donovan's jaw tightened. He whispered, "They're here." We didn't see them. Not yet, but we felt it. The invisible weight of eyes on us, the jungle holding its breath. The Viet Cong were ghosts in this place, masters of silence, able to melt into the vines and roots until the jungle itself seemed to reach out with claws. Martinez muttered, "Feels like a shadow's waiting for us." And that was it. That was exactly what it felt like. We pressed on, one careful step at a time, but the tension thickened with every yard. My finger hovered on the trigger, knuckles white, eyes darting from tree to tree. We weren't walking through jungle anymore. We were walking through a trap, and all of us knew it. That was the first day I realized. Out here, you didn't just fight the enemy. You fought the shadows, and sometimes the shadows fought back. We moved off the narrow trail and deeper into the undergrowth, every sense stretched to breaking. The jungle pressed in tighter with every step. Vines tugging at our packs, branches clawing our helmets, the smell of damp earth and decay filling our lungs. Donovan led with the calm of a man who trusted his instincts more than his orders. His hand went up every few minutes. Halt, crouch, listen. And every time we stopped, I felt it again. That weight, that presence. "Shadows still with us?" Martinez whispered once, his voice so soft it barely reached me. "Shut it," Donovan growled. But his eyes, hard, gray, unblinking, told me he believed it too. Jackson's radio hissed softly on his back, the occasional burst of static loud as gunfire in the stillness. I could see sweat dripping down his temples, his shoulders sagging under the load. But he didn't complain. None of us did. Complaining would have broken the thin thread of control that kept us moving. Chen, our scout, slipped back to us after ranging ahead. His face was pale, his voice a whisper. Tracks. Fresh ones, VC. Maybe a squad, maybe more, heading the same way we are. Donovan swore under his breath. All right, eyes sharp. They know we're here. That was the thing about the jungle. You never just stumbled into the enemy. If you found their tracks, they already knew yours. We pressed on, nerves wound like springs. Every bird call made us twitch. Every rustle had us raising rifles. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. Then it happened. The jungle went silent. Not quiet, silent. No insects, no birds, just nothing. "Down!" Donovan barked. We dropped, Rifles up, eyes searching. The first shot cracked from somewhere unseen. Riley screamed, grabbing his shoulder, blood blooming through the fabric. Doc was on him in an instant, dragging him behind a root, hands working fast. Bullets whined through the air, snapping branches overhead. We fired back, blind into the green, the jungle swallowing the sound. Shadows flickered between trees, too fast, too fleeting to aim at. Martinez cursed, squeezing off rounds. "I can't see a damn thing." "Suppress, keep their heads down," Donovan shouted, his voice a steady anchor in the chaos. I fired, the rifle kicking into my shoulder. Each shot was swallowed by leaves and bark. Sparks of muzzle flash gone before I could even process where they came from. The jungle itself seemed to be firing at us. Then came the grenades, metal clattering on roots before erupting in dirt and smoke. The blast shook the ground, rattled my teeth. Jackson fell, blood on his face, the radio sparking. "Shadow!" Martinez yelled, panic bleeding into his tone. "They're everywhere!" Donovan grabbed him by the collar, yanked him close. "They're not everywhere, they're right there, so you fight right there, you hear me?" We fought, not for ground, not for victory, just to stay alive. The jungle lit with flashes, the smoke thick as fog. Riley screamed as Doc worked, trying to staunch the blood. Jackson groaned, trying to crawl toward the ruined radio. And in the madness, I realized something that chilled me more than the bullets. We weren't fighting men anymore. We were fighting shadows. The jungle had taken them, wrapped them in vines and darkness, made them part of itself. Every tree could have been a rifle, every shadow a hunter, and we were in its jaws. The firefight seemed endless, minutes stretching into lifetimes. Bullets shredded leaves. Grenades shook the roots beneath us, and still the enemy stayed invisible. We fired into the shadows, and the shadows fired back. Then, as suddenly as it began, the jungle swallowed the sound. The gunfire tapered off. No shouts, no footsteps, just silence. Thick, absolute silence. We froze, our rifles up, sweat dripping into our eyes. My ears rang from the blasts, but even through the ringing I knew the truth. They hadn't retreated. They were still there, watching, waiting. Donovan gestured sharply, "Fall back." We pulled Riley, groaning and pale, onto a makeshift litter. Jackson staggered, blood still running down his face, clutching what remained of the shattered radio. Doc's hands were slick with blood, his jaw tight. Every step away from that ambush felt like stepping deeper into a trap. Martinez muttered a prayer under his breath, over and over like a mantra. We didn't talk much. The jungle didn't allow it. Our boots sank into mud, our breath came ragged, our eyes searched every tree trunk, every vine. The silence pressed on us until even the sound of our own movements felt wrong. Chen stopped suddenly, raising a clenched fist. We all froze. He crouched, touched the earth, then held up his fingers. Dark smears. Blood. Trail, he whispered. "They're leading us." My stomach dropped. It wasn't just an ambush, it was a hunt. Donovan's face hardened. "We don't follow, we cut west." We veered into thicker brush, forcing our way through vines and tangled roots. The jungle seemed to resist us, closing in tighter. Branches snapped against our helmets. Mosquitoes swarmed our bloody skin, unrelenting. After an hour, we found a stream. Shallow, muddy, barely moving. Donovan motioned us in. The cold water was a shock, soaking our boots, but it covered our trail. We moved downstream, the water muffling our steps. For a moment, hope stirred. Maybe we'd shaken them. Then Martinez whispered, "Listen." We stopped. The sound came faint at first, then clearer. The soft ripple of water downstream. Someone else was moving in the stream, not us. Donovan's eyes narrowed. He pointed up the bank. We scrambled into the brush, lying flat, rifles ready. Moments later, shadows emerged through the mist of the water. 3 figures, weapons held high above their heads. Viet Cong. Their faces painted, eyes scanning, movements careful. Scouts. They stopped right where we'd been. One crouched, dipped, his hand into the water, then looked upstream, toward us. My finger tightened on the trigger. Sweat dripped down my cheek. One squeeze and I could drop him. But Donovan's hand pressed down on my barrel, steady and firm. Not yet. The scout's gaze lingered. Then, as if satisfied, he gestured to the others, and they moved on, vanishing into the green mist. We didn't move for a long time after that. My chest ached from holding my breath. Finally, Donovan whispered, "We keep moving. Fast." We carried Riley, we dragged Jackson, we pushed through mud and vines until my legs burned like fire. Every step felt heavier. Every breath tasted like rot. By dusk, we found a small clearing, a patch of dirt under a collapsed tree. We dug in there exhausted. No fire, no talking, just silence and the sound of the jungle breathing around us. That night I lay awake, staring into the dark canopy above. My thoughts circled back to the same terrifying realization. We weren't on patrol anymore. We were prey. Morning came, but it didn't feel like morning. The canopy was too thick for light to break through. We woke to a gray-green twilight, our uniforms still damp, our skin raw from insect bites. Riley coughed weakly, his fever rising. Jackson's head wound had swollen, his eyes glassy. Doc did what he could, but out here medicine was just bandages and prayers. Donovan crouched over the map, whispering to Chen. I leaned in, catching fragments. Here's the ridge. If we cut east, we can reach the extraction zone in 2 days. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the truth. He wasn't sure we'd make it. We moved out, every step heavier than the last. The jungle pressed tighter, vines like ropes across our chests, thorns biting at our arms. The buzzing of insects was a constant assault. Sweat dripped from our brows, mixing with grime until our faces felt caked in mud. Around midday, we found an abandoned Japanese encampment. Rusted helmets, shredded canvas, and a cooking fire long since drowned by rain. A haunting sight. The ghosts of soldiers who had walked this same path, swallowed by the same jungle. Martinez muttered, "Looks like the place ate 'em alive." None of us laughed. We pressed on, but soon Chen stopped again, crouching low. He pointed to the ground, boot prints, fresh, pressed deep into the mud. Not ours. They're paralleling us, he whispered, keeping pace. The words chilled me more than gunfire ever could. Whoever was hunting us wasn't rushing. They had time. They knew we were trapped by the terrain, the wounded, and the clock. They were patient. We picked up the pace, but that only made things worse. The heat punished us. O'Reilly stumbled, nearly dropping the radio. Donovan snapped, "Keep it together, Marine." But his voice cracked with fatigue. By late afternoon, we reached a small hill, a rare rise above the suffocating flatland. From the top, through a break in the trees, we caught a glimpse of the river, wide and brown, snaking through the valley. Our way out, but between us and that river lay more jungle, and whatever shadows followed us. As night fell, we dug in on the hilltop. We ate what little rations we had left. No one spoke much. Riley's breathing was ragged. Jackson stared blankly into the dark. Martinez fingered the cross around his neck, lips moving in silent prayer. I tried to sleep, but the jungle wouldn't let me. Every rustle, every snap of a twig, every whisper of wind felt like eyes on us. At one point, I swore I saw movement. At the tree line, a figure tall and thin just watching. When I blinked, it was gone. Donovan made his rounds, crouching beside each of us, whispering words meant to steady. "Hold fast. Tomorrow we move for the river." His voice was calm, but I could see the exhaustion in his face. The night stretched on forever. My hand never left my rifle. The shadows pressed closer, heavier, and just before dawn, a single sound cut through the jungle's hum, 3 sharp clicks like stones tapping together. A signal, not ours. My blood ran cold. We weren't just being hunted, we were being surrounded. The jungle was still in that fragile moment before dawn, the air heavy and unmoving when the first shot cracked. Martinez jerked forward, his helmet flying off as dirt exploded behind him. "Contact!" he shouted, rolling behind a root. The tree line lit up with muzzle flashes. Bullets hissed through the air, tearing bark from trees, showering us with splinters. We returned fire, but it was chaos. The enemy was everywhere. Or at least it felt like they were. Donovan's voice cut through the storm. "Hold your ground, keep your sectors covered." I fired into the shadows, the recoil hammering my shoulder, my ears ringing. Shapes darted between the trees, but every time I locked on, they vanished into the green. It was like trying to shoot at ghosts. Riley groaned, clutching his bandaged side. Doc dragged him further behind cover, hands shaking but steady enough to keep pressure on the wound. Jackson, pale and bleeding, tried to crawl toward the radio, but it was dead weight. Antenna snapped from the last ambush. "Frag out!" Martinez yelled, lobbing a grenade downhill. The blast shook the ground, leaves raining down from above. A brief silence followed, and then the shadows answered with grenades of their own. Explosions ripped the earth, sending us scrambling for deeper cover. O'Reilly cursed, firing his rifle until the bolt locked back on an empty chamber. He slapped in a new magazine, his hands slick with sweat. "They're trying to push us off the hill." Donovan's jaw was set, his eyes cold. "Then we don't let them." But the truth was written in all our faces. We couldn't hold forever. The firefight dragged on, an endless rhythm of bursts and screams. The jungle became a furnace of smoke and fire, the dawn light barely piercing through the haze. I caught glimpses of our hunters, lean men in dark uniforms, their eyes cold, their movements coordinated. They weren't rushing us, they were probing, testing, waiting for us to bleed out. Then came the whistle, a shrill, cutting sound that froze my blood. Mortars. The first shell whistled in, slamming into the base of the hill. The shockwave threw me flat, my ears ringing, mouth full of dirt. Another came, closer this time, blasting a crater where Martinez had been crouched seconds before. He screamed, rolling on the ground, shrapnel embedded in his leg. "Doc!" Donovan barked. Doc crawled to him without hesitation, dragging Martinez back by the collar. His hands moved fast, pressing gauze into the bleeding wound, whispering prayers under his breath. We were being boxed in. I could see it in Donovan's eyes. This hill wasn't a defense anymore, it was a trap. "Chen!" Donovan shouted. "Find us a way out!" Chen nodded once, vanishing into the undergrowth with that same silent grace. Seconds later, another mortar shell landed, closer still, showering us with burning fragments. My heart hammered in my chest. We couldn't stay. We wouldn't survive another volley. Then Chen reappeared, crouching low, his face grim. "Ravine on the east slope. Leads toward the river. It's steep, but it's cover." Donovan didn't hesitate. "That's our exit. Prep to move. Martinez, you'll be carried. O'Reilly, you're on point with Chen. The rest of you, suppress." We unleashed a furious volley, rifles spitting fire into the jungle, trying to pin down shadows long enough to move. Donovan hoisted Martinez's arm over his shoulder, dragging him upright. Riley stumbled with Doc's help, his face pale as chalk. We broke from the hilltop, sliding down the eastern slope into the ravine. Bullets snapped around us, leaves shredding, dirt exploding. Mortars thumped again, but they overshot, slamming into the crest above us. The jungle swallowed us, damp and choking, but alive. We were running now, stumbling through roots and mud, every breath a ragged gasp. The shadow was still with us, I could feel it, but for the moment we'd slipped its grasp, and I knew the jungle wasn't finished yet. The ravine was steep, slick with mud and choked with vines. We half climbed, half slid our way down, every stumble sending pebbles rattling into the dark below. The air was cooler here, but it carried no relief, just a damp, earthy stench that clung to our throats. Martinez groaned with every jolt as Donovan and O'Reilly carried him between them, his leg bandaged tight but still bleeding through. Riley stumbled, leaning heavy on Doc, his face gray with fever. We were falling apart, one man at a time. "Keep moving," Donovan urged, his voice low but sharp. "The river's our lifeline." But the jungle had other plans. The further we pushed into the ravine, the darker it became. Roots twisted overhead, strangling what little light the canopy allowed. Every echo of our boots seemed too loud, bouncing off the walls like signals to anyone listening. Chen froze us twice, once for distant movement above the rim, once for the faint rustle of leaves behind us. Each time we dropped to a knee, weapons raised, breath caught in our throats. But no attack came, not yet. "They're hurting us," Martinez rasped, his voice strained. "Like cattle," no one answered, but we all felt it. By midday, our pace slowed to a crawl. The mud sucked at our boots, the insects swarmed thicker, and the air pressed on our lungs like wet cloth. Every few minutes, one of us would glance behind, half expecting to see figures stepping out of the green. Nothing ever appeared. The silence was worse than contact. At one point, we found the remnants of an old position. Rotted sandbags, a rusted ammo tin, the faint impression of foxholes long abandoned. Martinez spat into the mud. Even the Japs didn't want to stay here. We moved on, tension coiled so tight it hurt. Every sound was amplified. The creak of O'Reilly's radio harness, the click of a safety, the labored breaths of Riley. My nerves felt flayed raw, every sense screaming. Then came the river. We broke through the vines into a clearing, the water wide and slow, brown with silt. Relief surged through us, our marker, our chance at escape. But even as I felt it, something in my gut twisted. It was too quiet. The water's surface rippled gently. No birds swooped low to fish. No insects hovered above. Just stillness. Chen crouched at the bank, dipping a hand into the water. His voice was flat. "We can cross here. Depth's manageable." Donovan nodded. "One at a time. Cover arcs. Move." O'Reilly waded in first, the radio held high above his head. The water reached his chest, his boots sinking into the silt. He grunted, forcing each step forward. Chen followed, eyes scanning the far bank. I was next. The river closed around me, cold and suffocating after days in the heat. My uniform dragged heavy, my rifle barely clear of the surface. I could feel the current pulling at my legs, slow but insistent, like hands trying to drag me under. Halfway across, Martinez hissed in pain, nearly slipping from Donovan's grip. Doc shouted encouragement, Riley stumbled, and the whole squad's line faltered. That's when I saw it. On the far bank, just beyond the tree line, a flash of movement. A figure, tall, still, watching. "Donovan," I whispered, my voice swallowed by the water. "We're not alone." The jungle was waiting. Again, the river felt endless. Each step dragged us deeper into its pull, the silt sucking at our boots, the weight of our gear threatening to drag us under. O'Reilly's radio was just a dark shape above the water. Martinez whimpered, his arm locked over Donovan's shoulder. Doc kept whispering to Riley, urging him to stay awake. And then the jungle roared to life. Gunfire erupted from the far bank, muzzle flashes strobing between the trees. Bullets cracked into the water, sending sprays of brown up around us. The river turned into a killing ground. "Go! Move!" Donovan bellowed, forcing Martinez forward even as rounds tore through the water around them. I raised my rifle, firing blind at the tree line. The recoil nearly knocked me off balance, the water dragging at my legs. O'Reilly stumbled, cursing as a round punched into the radio on his back, sparks hissing. The antenna snapped, vanishing beneath the current. Chen was already firing from midstream, each shot calm, deliberate. "Keep them down! Keep moving!" he shouted, his voice ragged with strain. A mortar thumped. The shell landed just short of the riverbank, the explosion blasting a geyser of water into the air. We were drenched, ears ringing, the current surging from the impact. Martinez screamed as shrapnel tore into his back. Donovan didn't stop. He dragged him forward, teeth clenched, eyes locked on the far shore. Doc scrambled behind them, one hand on Riley, the other gripping his rifle. We reached the far bank in a chaos of mud and blood. Chen was first up, hauling himself onto the roots, firing into the trees at shapes darting between trunks. I scrambled after him, slipping in the muck, my rifle caked in filth but still spitting rounds. Donovan shoved Martinez up onto the bank, then pulled himself up with sheer force of will. O'Reilly crawled beside him, the useless radio still strapped to his back, his eyes wide with panic. Then I saw Jackson. He hadn't made it. He was face down in the water, the current pulling at him. I lunged, grabbed his harness, and heaved him up, choking on the river as rounds smacked into the surface. With Chen's cover fire, I dragged him to the bank, gasping for air. "Up! All of you, move!" Donovan shouted. We crawled into the tree line, collapsing behind the thick roots of an ancient tree. The jungle swallowed us again, muffling the river's chaos behind us. But the gunfire didn't stop. It followed. "They knew," Chen said, his voice hollow. "They were waiting at the crossing." Doc pressed gauze into Martinez's wounds, his hands red, his face grim. Riley lay beside him, coughing, barely conscious. O'Reilly slumped against the roots, the ruined radio still strapped on, his chest heaving. Donovan's face was stone, his voice steady, though his hands trembled. "We move east. Keep the river to our left. They want us pinned. We won't give them that satisfaction." But we all knew the truth. The river hadn't been salvation. It had been another trap. And we'd walked right into it. The shadow hadn't just followed us, it was guiding us, and the jungle wasn't done yet. We staggered through the trees, soaked, bleeding, half carrying each other. Every step felt like it might be the last. The river was behind us, but the jungle never let go. It clung to us, wrapped around us, pressed against our ears with that same heavy silence that had followed us since the first night. Chen kept us moving, weaving through the brush like he'd been born in it. Donovan pushed us forward with sheer will, one hand gripping Martinez, the other waving us on. Doc was little more than a shadow himself now, his face smeared with blood that wasn't all his own, whispering encouragement to Riley, who drifted in and out of consciousness. And the shadows followed, always just out of sight, always there. The breaking point came at dusk. We stumbled into a clearing wide enough for the dying light to spill down. For a moment we froze, because there was nothing. No movement, no birds, no wind, just the stillness of a place holding its breath. Then the jungle erupted. Gunfire from all sides, figures emerging from the tree line, rifles raised, eyes hard. They'd finally closed the noose. "Form up!" Donovan roared, dragging Martinez to the ground, firing in short, controlled bursts. Chen dropped to a knee, his shots crisp, deliberate, each one finding a target. O'Reilly's big frame shook with every round he fired, the ruined radio still strapped to his back like a dead weight. We gave everything we had left. Grenades exploded, filling the clearing with smoke and dirt. The air turned into a storm of bullets and screams. Doc was hit, a round tearing through his arm, but he kept firing one-handed, his other pressed tight to Riley's chest. It was hopeless. We all knew it. The shadow had waited long enough, and now it wanted us whole. Then through the chaos, the impossible. Rotor blades. The thump, thump, thump grew louder, a vibration in the chest before it was sound in the ears. A Huey broke through the canopy above, skimming low, its side doors open, machine gun blazing into the tree line. The enemy scattered, diving for cover as the helicopter raked the clearing with fire. "Smoke! Mark us!" Donovan bellowed. O'Reilly yanked a grenade from his vest, pulled the pin with his teeth, and hurled it into the open. Yellow smoke billowed up, curling into the sky like a desperate prayer. The Huey swooped in, skids barely touching the ground. The crew chief leaned out, shouting, "Move! Move!" We ran, or staggered, or crawled. Donovan shoved Martinez up first, then Doc with Riley, then O'Reilly. Chen covered us, firing until his last magazine clicked dry, then sprinted for the bird. I was the last. I turned once, just once, looking back at the tree line, and there it was, still. A figure tall and still, half hidden in the green, watching, always watching. Then Donovan's hand grabbed my harness, yanking me into the Huey. The bird lifted, the jungle falling away beneath us. Bullets chased us, leaves and branches whipping in the rotor wash. And then, silence again. But this time it was distance. We were alive. Barely. Martinez lay pale, his eyes glazed. Doc worked frantically to keep Riley breathing. O'Reilly slumped against the door, blood running down his cheek. Chen sat rigid, rifle across his lap, eyes still fixed on the horizon. Donovan just stared at the jungle shrinking below, his jaw tight, his face unreadable. And me? I watched until the canopy was just a smear of green, and I swore I could still see it, that shadow standing there, patient, waiting. The jungle hadn't let us go. Not really. Part of us would always be down there, trapped in the vines, buried in the mud. It's been years since that patrol, but even now, when the night is still and the silence grows too deep, I feel it, watching, following. That's the thing about shadows, you never outrun them. If you've made it this far into the story, it means you're one of us. You understand the weight of these memories. So if you want more stories like this one, subscribe to the War Chair. Leave a comment, too. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Every voice matters, and every story deserves to be remembered.